Check, check, check.
Check, check, check.
Hey everybody, it's Rob. We're just about to get started with this week's episode. Less than 10 minutes left. While you got a couple of minutes here, why don't you go check out OTheAnthem.com. It's where you can find everything Oh The Anthem, including the merch store, the podcast, and all of the videos. Open up a new tab.
Anchor.fm/OTheAnthem is the place where you can get direct links to all the podcatchers you use to listen to our show every week.
Did you know we record every episode live on Facebook? Of course you do. But make sure that you're liking the page and turning on notifications so you get notified when we go live.
We make a ton of video content between the podcast, the short films, Heretics. YouTube.com/OTheAnthem is the place for it all.
And of course you can find me on any social network at Robert N. Cheek.
And me at LegendCB5.
And you can find the podcast at Oh The Anthem on all your social networks. Before we get to that, we have to talk about the ongoing thing that is the 2020 election. Most specifically, the president's reaction to the 2020 election. And this is, I think, the most telling image to come out of this entire election process. And this thing that you see to my side here is a list of Trump tweets. And don't worry, I didn't go to Trump's tweets because I don't want to do that. But I did go to a website where somebody was talking about his tweets and I stole their screenshot. So, but this is what they're doing now. They are just basically saying, he posts a tweet. The first tweet here it's actually from a couple weeks ago, but big press conference today in Philadelphia at Four Seasons, total landscaping. Oh, this
was nothing wrong about that tweet. Flag that one, Twitter.
Meme of the week was somebody who had their yard being done by Four Seasons and they had like the trailer parked out front and it was like, I feel like I'm meeting a celebrity.
They're taking advantage though. They are putting together t-shirts and stuff like they have a Lawn and Order t-shirt.
Yeah.
Make America Rake Again, I think was one of theirs. Like it's pretty good. They're capital. I always like it when a small business like this can totally capitalize on the situation.
I have not liked I think we talked about it last year when we went home for Christmas and a lot of Maryland was like choose us for your plumbing and choose Trump again in 2020. And I'm like, nope, not using you. But I will take the punny advertisements by the company that got roped into this for no reason, clearly.
Well, it also sounded like the call that was involved in booking it was like, are you guys available for a press conference today? And it's like, yeah, sure, I guess.
Like, I mean, we don't have a conference room. We have the parking lot. We'll take it. It's fine. Is the sign out there? Are we going to be able to see the sign? Yes. Okay, we got it.
Good enough.
George, I just got the weirdest call. The president's coming here? I don't know.
Rudy Giuliani and somebody on the sex offender registry is going to be showing up.
Aren't those the same person?
Hit it,
Manny. Hey. But so what they've done is basically Twitter has censored the president. And I use this as an example just because his first tweet is relatively normal. It's just making a point. And then he follows it up with a bunch of like, the election is fraud and people are voting who shouldn't have voted. And Twitter's just basically like, nope, we're not.
About it like this, like if you say you were going to court for something, right? Like you were wrongly accused for killing your wife, and it was really the one-armed man who did it, right?
Mhm,
And you needed to hire a lawyer. And you look around, and you can't get any of the top lawyers, so you have to settle for Rudy Giuliani or someone of his ilk, right?
Wait, is he the guy with his hand in his pants in that video?
And the Borat, yes.
No, okay.
So you have to hire a Rudy Giuliani-like lawyer, right? And then you're showing up for court. You're like in your suit. You're ready for the whole thing to start. You're looking around for your lawyer. And then he comes in. He's just like, like, oh, sorry, I'm late. I got pulled over for a DUI, but it's all right. I bribed the cop. And you got to like look at him and you're just like, should you be my legal counsel at this moment? If this is how badly you fuck up on the way to help me, is this something that I want to examine further?
There's a meme thing that I loved when I was practicing law, and it's like, it's still good. It just doesn't, I don't see these on the daily anymore. It was like, you're going to jail if, and it was like pictures of lawyers where like one guy was wearing house shoes to court, and they're like, if your lawyer shows up with these, you going to jail. So you should just cut a deal. And one of them, the lawyer came in and he was wearing a Tommy Bahama shirt. And then he borrowed somebody's jacket to put on over it and pushed his very long hair out of his face with sunglasses. And they're like, if your lawyer looks like this, you're going to jail. So you need to cut a deal.
I can't even. The other thing is that like Trump, in part of the preparing for possibly having to have a legal fight upcoming in this election, looked at Jared and was just like, we have the legal team all squared away, right? And Jared's like, yeah, no problem. No problem.
Got it.
We got it. And then he turns around and it's Pam Bondi and Rudy Giuliani. like,
all right, who's still bar approved here? Anybody?
I would imagine
All right.
that when Trump was like, get me the finest set of election lawyers you can find, like you're thinking that he's going to put together like an OJ style dream team or something like that. Like not Giuliani and Pam Bondi.
What are the odds that Jared put together a really great team, and then they went to meet Trump, and Trump's like, I don't know any of these guys. Who are these guys? And like, this is literally the primo election law team in the country. And he's like, nah, we got to get Rudy in here. Is Rudy still in the building? Pam? Is Pam here? Can we add these? And then all the other lawyers were like, nah, fuck this. And they left. And it's just Rudy and Pam now.
I don't get it.
But obviously, the point of this being, Trump is fighting the results of the election on grounds that, as a former attorney, do not make sense to me. As a political scientist, I have the degree. They don't make sense to me. As a scholar, if you will, of politics, they don't make sense to me. Have you heard anything that, other than the automatic recounts, which the states are like, yeah, we got to redo the vote. We got to count them again. And by the way, how upset's Nevada going to be when they finish in 6 weeks and then they got to redo that same vote next day? Poor people.
We'll have it by the next election. Don't worry.
But
by the way,
the
memes last week of making fun of Nevada were chef's kiss, just beautiful. I loved it. I was enjoying every single one of them.
Well, and I think I told you on near election day, my theory is that the state Secretary of State there was like, all right, we have a chance to be a kingmaker here. We can make every president come to Nevada. So we need to time this out exactly right. Okay, how far are we? 86. All right, we're right on track. Oh, Pennsylvania's caught it. Well, shit. Never mind. All right, just whenever you're ready, give me those ballots. Because it felt like they were trying to build it up to be like, Arizona's going to call, and he needs 6. He's got to get 6 to get to 270, and guess who's got 6, baby? It's right here.
What's amazing to me about the whole thing is that, like, it would be the same way if the election ever came down to California. Like, if it's like all the states were decided except for California because, I don't know, some Republican from California was running for president.
This week on the OD Anthem podcast, we are back remote. Good thing we're getting pretty professional at this by now. We're going to be talking about COVID, the reason we're remote, and many other things like 200,000 cases in a day and 2,000 dead in a day. The Thanksgiving tsunami is coming. Get ready, folks. The election, Trump is more unstable than ever. Oh, we're going to talk about that and the Electoral College. The Weeknd gets snubbed at the Grammys along with a lot of other artists. We got some sports ball. This NFL week, oh, it was terrible on fantasy. I can't even begin to tell you. And of course, the Baltimore Corner. Snitches get likes? That doesn't seem right. All that and more on this week's episode of the OD Anthem Podcast.
Nothing like watching a box on the freeway, wondering when it's going to cause trouble. This is Corey, and this is the OD Anthem Podcast.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's Rob. Welcome to episode 347 of the OD Anthem Podcast, coming to you from all over LA. Yes, producer Roberto has returned, and that means, once again, I am stuck all on my own in Hollywood. That's got to be a good screenplay. Thank you for joining
all
us.
alone in Hollywood.
Thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you for listening on your podcatcher of choice. The easiest way. I mean, I tell you every time. Anchor.fm/OD Anthem. It's the easiest way to find it. The exact link to the podcast app of your choice.
Should have started while you were ahead. You nailed that first part, and then you just I'm gonna get a little extra. And
I was like, I realized I left a little bit out, and I didn't want to just keep people from getting it. God, I'm all over my tongue tonight. Excuse.
So also keep in mind you can watch us live every Monday night during the recording and YouTube, Twitch, Twitter via Periscope, and Facebook. We're live everywhere at OD Anthem. So thank you for joining us. And of course, you can be part of the show right here on our Discord. The link is going to be available wherever you're watching, and wherever you comment, you can come and we'll put it up right on the screen and take your questions live. So
Indeed.
All right, so wait, let me get back. We really need producer Roberto, but also, he's back, so that means I got to be quarantined again. Well, I guess you guys are quarantined. That's the weird thing. It's like, oh, we're back in isolation, and Rob's the only one who has to stay away from everybody.
Well, I mean, like, it's no wonderful experience over here either, just because, for as many rules as California and Los Angeles has put upon us, they don't really tell you what to do if something comes up like this. Like I was telling Roberto when he pulled up, like I don't know how to properly be careful around this situation. Like, what's the proper amount of respect we should give for the coronavirus without being disrespectful to you too?
What happens when you have a roommate who is so wealthy they can go on a multi-week vacation, a multi-week international vacation with their family, risk infecting everyone that they know and love, and then come back? What do you do? It's really hard to say. But Patient Cerro, as I'm going to call him from now on, has returned. So I guess we'll find out 10 to 14 days from now whether or not we're all safe, or whether, for once, given that this is just past Thanksgiving week, the natives have infected the white man. I guess that's what we're going to find out. I got a bunch of those. Let me know when I go too far, Corey. I'm going to keep throwing them in here. Let me know when I go too far.
Can we start now? No, I mean, like, and here's the thing that sucks, because like right now, LA County has a restriction against anyone from anyone outside a household being together.
Yeah.
Inside or anywhere, really. I mean, like, you can't even like meet somebody at the beach who's from a different household. I don't know how you would necessarily avoid it unless you're talking about distancing between people. Like, I can't help it if somebody else decided to go to the beach, right? I mean, like.
Now you're making the excuses that every person's making at the beach.
It's not my beach, right? Is it? Because, like, is it the first person who shows up becomes owner of the beach? Like, because then a second household. Anyway, it's a very weird situation. I feel like everyone just has to use their best judgment whenever they come up with some sort of situation like this. I mean, it was a similar thing with you. Like, you went home to see people. You flew on an airplane. We kept some time between us before we saw each other again.
Yeah.
Roberto lives here, so he doesn't have any kind of like anywhere else to go to like quarantine this off. So
Wait, doesn't
you
he
know,
have a
it's one of-
girlfriend? Doesn't she have a place to live? Is she there with you now? Did she bring herself into your quarantine? I have so many questions. See,
we all need to just figure out the best way going forward, and we'll get there eventually. I'm just happy that we've all remained safe and healthy throughout this whole thing, because I don't know if you guys have been watching the news, but it's been getting very bad out there for the coronavirus.
has it
With
been?
200,000 cases
Ooh.
running wild all over the country. Pretty much every single state except for Maine and Hawaii to be experiencing like record highs, basically. Like it is, and just if you're watching the video, you see the image next to me here. That first spike that looks like nothing, like the first plateau, like where it first starts ramping up slightly, is when we shut everything down in March.
An unimaginable hill. We thought, oh my God, things are out of control.
Getting up
get a
on
handle on this.
50,000 cases a day.
Yeah.
On average there. So, and then we had our second spike in the middle of the summer around Memorial Day and 4th of July and stuff like that,
When people got
where
bored.
we got up to almost 100,000 cases.
Yep.
And then it was 4 weeks ago at this point, 3 weeks ago, where we were talking about how the average had reached 100,000 cases, and now we're way past that. We're up to 200,000 now. And I imagine that our numbers are even going to be worse once the 2 weeks of Thanksgiving basically comes up. You know, like once we start seeing positive cases from people who are traveling at Thanksgiving. This is just a really bad place that we're in right now, and I don't know what to do or say to make people respect it. That's the problem. Like it just feels like a basic respect thing at this point, doesn't it? Like,
Yeah, and I mean, so the other part of this equation is we're losing 2,000 people a day. The graph that you saw with Corey there, that's the top graph here. The bottom graph is deaths per day with a 7-day rolling average. And opposite almost at the beginning, huge big spike at the beginning, and then we got a handle on it, and then there was about the same. And what they said was, oh, well, we expect that the waves that will hit of cases won't be as bad on deaths, because now we know what we're getting into, right? Except for the cases are hitting so hard and so fast that we are overwhelming our ability to actually deal with the crisis. So California is at near 100% max on ICU beds.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing to consider there, like at the first spike where it was coming up on 50,000 cases, and we thought it was the very beginning of the pandemic. We were also not prepared with the number of hospital beds or the treatment that we would give to people. Like being the first people in kind of put you in a real bad position, because it slammed hospitals. They weren't expecting it, and we didn't know how to treat people necessarily.
Right.
We've gotten better at the therapeutics and being able to treat people and keeping people who are, on ventilators alive, people who are getting close to a ventilator, off a ventilator. Like there's a lot of good that's being done here to keep deaths down as much as humanly possible. But if the whole system gets slammed again, we're just going to have what happened in Italy, where people were dying in hallways because there was no place to put them. Like, this is the nightmare scenario where it's not just about like, oh God, you get a coronavirus and maybe you are knocked out for like 2 weeks or something like that. This is way worse, because at a certain point, if people who would be able to be cured in the hospital won't be able to be cured in the hospital, but rather just die because they can't be attended to. That's very. There's no way around the catastrophic levels of death that could follow coming into the beginning of the year.
Well, and unlike unlike the first wave, this one we are seeing 40% of the people who are getting new infections now are frontline workers, like nurses, workers in nursing homes, police, fire, paramedics. So it's getting to the point where, one, they're getting exhausted because there has been no break. It's just been like these lulls, but not really so that everyone can recover. It's never hit zero. I'm looking at the graph. It's never hit zero. So we've just basically like given them a little time off. Like, okay, no more double shifts, no more back-to-back doubles. You're back to your regular working schedule, but we can't have you take vacation or days off. We still need you to work all the time. And now it's
not
like
only
back
that,
to doubles.
but like, everyone has a job where at some point it gets busy, maybe you work retail and right around the holidays things just get really nuts, and maybe you have to work on Black Friday.
Although now it shouldn't, because people should be staying home.
Oh, I know, but hypothetically, years past in the olden days. But the idea that the especially the people who are working like frontline medical field positions are like, essentially doing a Black Friday shift every single day.
Yeah.
For the last 10 months, and there's nothing that any of us can do to like slow it down. Like if everyone just stayed home, like literally didn't go out for anything other than the absolute necessary essentials, we could still get a handle on this thing. But nobody seems to want to A, do that, or B, like think about in the construct anybody else other than themselves.
Well, and it's interesting you say, Corey, because you say, in years past, in the olden times, and I know you can see the screen that we're looking at here. This is the olden times. This is Thanksgiving, the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, 2019. And as you can see, air traffic, insane. So obviously, when we compare that, hang on, let me get to my my screen here. Where am I? Here, 5. So we compare that to this, which is Thanksgiving, Tuesday before Thanksgiving of 2020. You can see such a large difference between those two pictures that it's just crazy. Sorry, I'm trying to get back to you. Yeah.
It's I just don't get it. Like, and I know I've said that a lot, but this one in particular sort of seems like, there were certain people who were at different times were trying to inspire people with the idea that we're through the worst of it. Like we're on the downslope of this, right?
Yeah, we're rounding the corner, right?
We're rounding the corner. And whether or not like we're believing it in a sense like this is just mysterious or miraculously going to go away, or we're going to be closer to a vaccine than we were to the beginning, like, which is where I think most people were like with the positivity. Like I know I heard John Taffer talking about it, where he's just like, we're closer to the end where the vaccine is than we were to the beginning. So if you think about it, like we're already past most of the worst of it, and there's still a lot to go. But if we can put our heads down and know that we're closer to the end than we were to the beginning, we can psychologically get ourselves through this and figure out a way to set ourselves up for when everything gets back to normal, right?
Except we're not, though. Because for most average people, you're not going to get a vaccine until quarter 3, quarter 4 of 2021. So we're a year away from that.
Hypothetically, yes, I know. But I'm saying, like, even if you're looking at it in the most optimistic levels possible, right? Like, why go home for Thanksgiving? If there's a chance that you could be getting the vaccine, like, for me, from, like, my birthday. If, like, April, I could get the vaccine, and then life essentially for me is back to normal. I go home right away. Like it's just I delayed Thanksgiving by 5 months. Like it's not like I'm never gonna see my family again. Like I feel relatively positive now at this point that we're closer to life back to normal than we were from the beginning. And whether or not that turns out to be true, or whether or not it's like everyone's not vaccinated until this time next year, like it still feels like there's more of a chance that we're closer to normal this time, or Thanksgiving next year.
Well, listen, I said if this graph keeps going up the way that it's going up, we may get herd immunity after all. Because much like the murder rate in Baltimore, if there's not that many people, if you keep killing them off at the rate that you're killing them off, eventually there just won't be people in Baltimore.
I mean, the rate will go down to the point where we killed 100 people. The homicide rate was this year. We killed 100 people, and that was the last 100 people in the city of Baltimore.
Yeah, there was only 200 people. 100 of them killed the other 100. We were able to lock up 5 of that 100 on their murder cases, and the other 100 are dead. So now we're down to 95 people in the city of Baltimore. Congratulations. But I mean, there are 200,000 new cases every single day. One in 140 people in California is infected right now.
In Los Angeles.
In Los Angeles. And 2,000 people a day are dying. And I was looking for a metaphor or a simile to use for 2,000 people dying per day, and there are none, except for war. And even war is a bad example, because there were days during warfare where you lost 2,000 a day, like the invasion of Omaha Beach.
Yeah.
But it didn't go consistently 2,000 a day every day for a long period of time. You didn't get 1,000.
You're basically talking about it in like the averages more than anything.
Yeah.
Like what and you brought up the number of like 1 out of 140 something people in Los Angeles like is positive right now, whether they know it or not. That was like sort of the guesstimate. So if you're a person who lives in Los Angeles like Rob and I, you have to sort of think about this in terms of like, I'm going to run into a certain number of people in a day, because there's no way you can like knock it out to zero. You know, like I went to all I've done in the last 24 hours here. I did run out for lunch, but I didn't actually like get close to anybody. But like within my own building in the last 24 hours.
But you got close to me at lunch. Liar. Lies.
During in the last 24 hours in my building, I passed somebody in the hallway who wasn't wearing their mask. I was on the elevator and 3 people without their mask were trying to get on, so I got off the elevator to avoid them. I got home and somebody was on the elevator without a mask, so I waited until they got off the elevator before I got on the elevator. Like there's a lot of like, I don't even feel like I need to run into 140 people to run into the person who has it. You know, like I feel like the numbers are way higher than that. And a month ago, they were projecting it was like 1 in out of every 800 people had it or something like that, which felt like more like, oh, I'm not going to run into 800 people. Like, what am I going to do? Like go to some of those mega churches that are allowed to be open? Like,
It's the problem though is that it's like when you buy a red car and then all you see is red cars. You don't think about all the people you've passed that have their masks on, because you're just like, oh, safe. Asshole without a mask. Why would you be out without a mask right now? And it just sticks in your head, all those people who don't have masks on. But, and that's the thing, is like, you may have passed 140 people, and maybe not 140, that's probably a little high, but you passed like 50 people, and 4 of them didn't have masks on. Well, there's just a really low intelligence quotient of people who live in your building. I mean, they're USC students for the most part, after all. So I can't imagine that they're that bright. But
they're all Lori Laughlin's kid.
I mean, you know, apparently you can buy
they're
your
not
way
here
into
for
that
the school, and they're just here for the experience of college.
I mean, to be fair, I did get into USC. I chose not to go there. I went somewhere else. But
I mean, to be fair, I went to school for the experience of college.
But yeah, I don't understand. They call on the news this morning, they called it the Thanksgiving tsunami, because we keep calling it waves. But when you see a wave, what you see is a peak and a trough, and then a peak and a trough. And we're not getting that. We are getting like a small peak and then a lesser point that we can call a trough. And then it goes up higher than it was at the last peak. And then it goes lower, but the low point is not as low as the peak was for the first peak. And now we're going back up to the top. And it's like, this is just how a tsunami comes in. It's like it hits you, and then it hits you with a bigger wave, and it hits you with a bigger wave, and the water level just never goes down. And it's going to get worse and worse and worse.
Pull up the picture of the case count. I mean, like, you know, we never even had a crest on the first wave. Like, it basically just plateaued up until the crest of the second spike. But I mean, it looks more like a fucking mountain range in Utah than it does like, you know, like
that's it.
I mean, like, if you look at like where they arrowed out the limited testing meant that most infections were not confirmed during this wave. Like, yeah, so the numbers were higher than they were, like, you know, actually tested for at that time. But like, look at the numbers from that point on. Like, it doesn't significantly go lower. It just all of a sudden goes up. Like,
I remember when we were on the backside of that, and they were saying like, oh, here we go. We've rounded the turn. We're going to get control of this thing. And then disease experts were saying, no, fall. We're going into fall. It's going to be bad. Yeah. And here we are, this huge spike. And the number is dipping at the end. So if you can see, the very far right of the graph does seem to be heading downward. But again, one thing that I read about today was a concern that a lack of testing during the Thanksgiving actual holiday, the Thursday, the Friday, the Saturday, is going to cause numbers to lower and everyone to be like, oh, see, wasn't such a big deal. And then when the positivity rate from the 5 days later, 7 days later from the holiday actually hits, it's going to spike even up higher than it is.
Well, Deborah Birx, and regardless of what you think of her as a person, has said, and this is one of the more striking comments I think I've heard, especially from somebody who is like on the right side of the coronavirus issue here, is that if you went somewhere for Thanksgiving, if you met with friends, you should just assume that you're positive.
Yeah.
And you should start quarantining right away, which is a far cry from where we were earlier on in this whole thing, where they wanted to minimize it as much as humanly possible. She's more or less saying that, like, you know, hey, if you saw somebody from outside of your household, there's a pretty good chance you're sick. So maybe not go anywhere if you can avoid it. Like, you know, that's harder than we've heard from a lot, from her specifically, but from a lot of people on her team, you know, the coronavirus team.
I mean,
like, obviously going to hear from them for months, but like,
it means stronger advice just to get ignored, because I saw more people out today on my brief jaunt to the office than I saw previously. Less tourists, but in the regular, like, hey, people who live here sections of Hollywood,
yeah,
just as many people out. So maybe the tourists won't be here, but just restaurants still have people in them. The secret places where you can go and sit inside and eat, which you know about if you live here. Yeah, those are still there, and people are still sitting in them. So, so these rules, which the new update to our fantastic LA stay-at-home order, which Corey and I discussed in our
sarcasm much
our pre-show call. I don't believe Corey has this fundamental belief, and I don't want to misquote you. So, just you think that there is some science behind it, but that the people who are kind of putting it out, the policy out there, are like, all right, so what you're saying is 23.9% is the percentage that we need to limit it at in order to make sure the numbers go down. So I'm going to make it 20 because the policymaker is not the scientist.
I don't even know if there's like a science behind it per se, but I feel like to get these numbers, you have to like come from some sort of like scientific position, I guess, right?
Yeah.
And then you're just drawing everything based off of like these introductory conclusions that end up being the baseline that you judge the rest of your pandemic through. So like at the beginning, we had the full stay-at-home order, like everyone stay home, don't go out if you can't, blah, blah, blah. All stores are closed, all bars, all restaurants, everything is closed unless it's pickup or delivery. And then the restrictions started getting loosened, right? And then it was like, oh, retail at 50%, right? So clearly in their head, they were saying that a normal retail store might have 300 people in it. If we can limit it to 150, then the chances of one person being there and exposing all 149 other people in the store is a lot less than if there's 300 people in the store and that person gets 50 people. Like, you know, they're starting to do some sort of calculus as to like, where do we need to be in terms of percentage of people in a place?
But also that was when it was 1 in 800 like, sick people, and now it's 1 in 140 sick people.
Right.
So,
but I mean, like it feels arbitrary. Like It just feels like they just picked out a number based off of like what got them to the number that felt like it would be safe enough to explain to people, or like it's very all. The fact that we have a overnight curfew, which just affects businesses essentially, like, you know, like we're not supposed to be out past the curfew, but you know, there's nothing that can really stop you from going somewhere if you want to. Like, you know, the sheriff isn't going to pull you over and write you a ticket, you know, or like anything like that. And I think there is a legal argument that they can't stop the homeless, and I don't think they can ask for much proof of that. So if I just wanted to walk around all night and then some police officer stopped me, said, hey, why are you out? There's a curfew going on. And I say, I'm homeless. What can they really say to that argument?
I will also tell you, having been more of a night owl in this area, the late night crew are generally the safer crew too. When I'm at CVS at 2 o'clock in the morning, it's all masks. Most of us have gloves on. We're all keeping distant from each other. It's the 5 p.m. crew that are piling bodies in there, and like the liquor aisle has 40 people in it. And I walk in there and say, nope. And I turn and walk back out, and I'm like, I'll come back at 2 a.m. when there's nobody here. And so I don't understand the overnight curfew either. I get it. It's supposed to keep people out of bars, but it hasn't done that. Maybe this new thing about shutting down the restaurants and limiting retail to 35% instead of 50% for essential retail. Non-essential retail is 20% rather than 25%. Personal care services, so like cutting your hair and doing nails, are at 20% of maximum occupancy. Fitness centers, but only those who are doing stuff outside, because insides are still closed, are at 50% of maximum. Now, most of those people weren't doing anything outside, so they set their maximum during COVID, and then now they can do 50% of whatever made up maximum they did.
There was that gym that we passed on Sunset, I think it was Friday or something like that.
Yeah.
Where they had all the people working out outside, but they were all close to one another. They were wearing masks, but I mean, like, you know, it seemed like you just put 100 people inside of a tennis court and said, have fun. Like,
well, no, but you put them outside and then somebody comes and asks you, like, well, our maximum outside occupancy is 300. So, I mean, right now we're at 100. We're well below 50%. And it's like, who's going to call you on it? It's like, it doesn't matter.
Well, and we've discussed this before. Like, I don't want to be the person who's saying that this restaurant is not safe and this one is, but like, I think the consumer has a pretty good idea of like what seems safe to them.
No, and I disagree with that. They do not. People are dumb.
Some people do. I guess let me put it this way. I think some people are making distinctions about like what restaurants they feel like they can go to. But then some people who are just like, fuck the rules, are just going wherever they want. Yeah. And they're the people who are always at like, you know, these out, like these places that are basically in the bike lane on 7th Street, like, which is like, would get all the diseases if you stood around there for too long, even prior to COVID.
I was gonna say, prior to COVID, you stand on 7th Street and it's just like a biohazard area. I don't know why you would want to eat
7th Street was one of the type of places where you're kicking the crosswalk because you don't want to actually touch it with your hand. Like,
that's exactly right. But
I'm giving some Shawn Michaels kicks to some crosswalk buttons to avoid.
There are people
touching whatever the hell it was.
There are people who show us why seatbelt laws are a thing. Because generally speaking, I don't wear a seatbelt because I don't care. I'm a nihilist, and I think this is all simulation. And my brother told me a story once about somebody who burned up in their car. And I've done the math in my head and said, I would rather be ejected from my car than trapped in it and burning to death. So that's a math I make in my head. But there are people who are just like, I don't understand seatbelt and I'm just not going to wear it. There are people that, like, reasons we have helmet laws because people don't know how to ride a bike and they still get on a bike and they get in a bike lane and they wander and meander all in and out of traffic, which is stuff I see pretty regularly on my scooter. Like, I saw a guy learning to ride a bike. His buddy was riding a bike next to him, holding the seat of his bike, and they're both in the bike lane. And I'm like, somebody is going to die. There is no way that doesn't end without a fatality. And those people are the reason that we just need to say, close it down, because you cannot make responsible decisions. Well, make it delivery only.
The things you really need to shut down are all the people who are having like parties up in the hills and stuff like that, or like renting out an Airbnb and throwing some party in it. Like, I don't know how you necessarily solve some of these problems, but, you know, saying that an arbitrary 20% on a retail location is, you know, like, and if you look like, based off of the numbers, and this is the worst thing too, because I'm not trying to like blanket defend restaurants here because clearly something is happening, but we can't draw any clear lines to it. But like by the numbers, people who claim that they got sick at a particular place, it's mostly very low on restaurants, and it's like mostly chain places.
Yep.
But you know, there's no contact tracing, so there's no way you can say that me riding by this place on 7th Street on a scooter got me coronavirus because I didn't actually go to the restaurant. You know, like I just inhaled somebody's breathing while I went by, and like that was it. You know.
Yeah, and the way that we solve this is 20 years ago, we start making infectious disease something that we focus on. When the first people said, hey, listen, global warming and a connected economy means this is going to be a bigger issue. And also, by the way, having 12 people live in a 3-bedroom apartment because LA rent is unbelievable is a problem, and we need to address it. Because right now, I know people who are in living situations that are in violation of the LA stay-at-home order because they got like 2 people living in the living room with a sheet hanging between them. And they're like 4 people in a bedroom. And it's just like, how can we split this rent one more way to get another body in here? And you got 12 people in a 3-bedroom. Like, okay. But that's his rent has been, not now, but has historically been ridiculous. Luckily, it looks like most of those people are leaving, so rent's going to get a lot better. But, you know, just some of this stuff doesn't make sense. Again, it seems arbitrary. Maybe there's some science behind it, but I am at the point now where I'm saying just shut it down and do what we should have done the first time. Shut everything down, shut the whole country down. Have the government just say for 3 weeks, listen, business owners, here's what we're going to do. We're going to tell the states, we're going to give you money. We want you to tell building owners that you're going to give them a break on their property taxes if they give their rentees a break on the rent. You'll get a break on the rent. Everybody gets a check to stay at home. Everybody go get food for 3 weeks and then just lock yourself in, and let's just lock in for 3 weeks and shut it all down and kill this thing out because it's the only thing that's going to work.
Here's where I feel the problem might be, and that is that
Is it
just
this?
recently.
Is it this?
Well,
Is this the problem?
Beyond that, just recently the Dow hit 30,000.
Yeah.
And if you remember, at the beginning of Trump's term, we talked about it hitting 25,000.
Yeah.
Which was, in terms of the stock market, an unheard of number. Like, Wilt Chamberlain scored 100 points in a basketball game. No one's gotten anywhere close to that since. So it would be like if you heard that LeBron James scored 150 points in a basketball game. You'd be like, oh my God. He, not only did he crush an unbelievable record, but he did it with like room to spare.
Yeah.
And then people will start saying like, well, clearly we're never going to get past 150 points in a game. That was an unbelievable outlier, and there's no way it could happen again. And then the next season, LeBron James scores 200 points in a single basketball game. More points than had been scored by a team in many cases in basketball history. He scored all by himself, and he's crushed the record again. Not only has he broken the 100-point barrier, but he's now doubled it in his next record. To people who think of it just as sort of like arbitrary numbers, they say like, oh my God, the economy is going incredible. But the problem is that like it is all being held together by strings at the moment. And
it's not even strings. It's somebody telling you there are strings there and not having to prove that there are strings there.
I mean, like, you know, we've been talking about the number of people who are in default or like basically at the point where they're going to get kicked out of their apartments the second that they're legally allowed to be able to get kicked out.
Yep.
You know, there is no safeguard in place to help anybody. And if I don't care if the Dow's at 30,000, it's going to fall a lot if all of a sudden there's 30% of people who are homeless. Like,
and using your LeBron example, it's important to keep in mind that the year that he hits 150 is also the year there's a rule change where a dunk is worth 3 and from outside the arc is now worth 7. And you're like, oh, well, that's why he hit 150. Wilt was hitting 2s and 3s and LeBron's hitting 3s and 7s. Like, so clearly it was much easier. And then the next year they changed it again and it's 5 and 10. So yeah, of course he's going to hit. Well, the Dow hitting 30,000, great. Except for when it hit 20,000 in the 80s and early 90s, our inflation level is ungodly next to what the dollar was worth even then. And then it was already inflated way above what it had been worth in the 30s and the 20s. So it's dollars to donuts, honestly. There's almost no comparison between the two of them. And the only person... Go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say, there's no way of looking at the Dow and saying this is how healthy the American economy is at the moment. Exactly. Yeah. It's how healthy the portfolios of the people who can afford to have money in the stock market are at the moment. Right. Because, before you used to get like a paltry little dividend and stuff like that. Like, you have a couple shares of Procter and Gamble, and maybe every quarter or so you get $50 to $100 if they had a really productive quarter, yeah. But more than anything, it's just watching the value of the stock go up. Something that you bought for $20 eventually becomes worth $50. And if you sell it at that point, then you've made $30 per share. And if you have 100 shares, you've made some sizable amount of money that you can invest into something else or whatever. But the people we're talking about are the ones who are like investing in like the Jersey black sites that get faster internet, who are able to trade millions upon millions of dollars on a whim and billions of dollars on a whim in terms of like these big, huge investment firms, and more automation into the whole thing than ever before, where any kind of a robot can detect when the correct moment to sell on something that's about to dive is. And if just all the robots at the same time know to make their $1 billion investments at the exact same moment, it creates these incredible fluctuations of some stocks. Like, there's been stocks. Tesla has risen a lot. Like, Elon Musk is now the third richest person in the world, passing Bill Gates, all pretty much on things that have happened with the stock market in this year. Like, all of his wealth has been increased by so much, basically because Tesla has been just going like the case count of coronavirus up and up and up.
Also because Bill Gates has given away more money during this pandemic than he gave away the 5 years beforehand, because he's just like finding places to give billions of dollars to.
Well, I mean, if you're Bill Gates,
he's going to get that money back with the vaccine that tracks everybody, and
if you're Bill Gates, like, that you're going to get enough money on just dividends and like anything that has to do with the stock you already own in Microsoft to keep you living comfortably for the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. Like, there's no, like, it's not like Microsoft is going to go up tomorrow. Like, he's going to have plenty of time to live the rest of his life without any kind of trouble, just off of what he owns in stock ownership. But, like, the average American isn't thinking about how their portfolio is doing in terms of like what they're trading. They're thinking about like what their 401k is doing and stuff like that. That's the investing most average Americans are doing. But the thought process of people it's almost like the government is thinking about like, oh, the stock market's doing so great, we just have to hold on until we get to the end of this virus and get to the vaccine, and then we'll be really off to the races. But I really worry that we are just dangerously close to the precipice where all of a sudden it's just going to drop. And there's going to be no recovery from, a massive stock market drop, plus everybody being out of their apartments and homeless, and the value of the dollar, and like, there was a part where I was thinking that like, oh, the coronavirus is going to go away one weekend, and then all of a sudden there's going to be a mad rush on film because people are going to be like, oh, we've been staying at home for 3 weeks, we're ready to shoot things. Clearly, that's not going to happen.
I mean, I think it still will happen. It'll just be not a rush. It'll be the gold rush, where we talk about the gold rush, but it actually happened over 9 months of people being like, all right, how do I get to California, and what do I need when I get there, and that kind of stuff.
I mean, if they said like April 1st is when every single person in Los Angeles is getting their vaccine, then I imagine I'm going to hear about a lot of film productions going up on April the 2nd.
Yeah.
But like, it's not going to happen like that realistically.
No.
But even then, like, like, who's going to be able to afford to be able to make a film if the entire economy is in the trash?
Well, people who have already gotten projects paid for and approved, and you just got to get on Daddy Warbucks to get you that vaccine.
If it's $30,000, if the Dow is at 30 and then all of a sudden it's at 15 because everything drops, then that hurts the ability of everyone to be able to find money to be able to make projects of their own, and then it just furthers the problems of like, when am I ever going to work again?
See, and I disagree, because I think that the money for things is there. The economy is not the stock market. The only person who thinks the economy is the stock market is this idiot. This idiot thinks that the strength of the economy is in fact the strength of the stock market. Money that is there and is ready to go for movie production is there and is ready to go. And whether or not the stock is worth triple what it was worth when it started or less than what it was worth when it was started, those companies are looking for long-term growth. Companies not like this guy, because this guy's not worried about long-term growth. He's worried about growth right now. And trust and believe, when the collapse happens, Joe Biden will be blamed. It'll happen after the 20th. If it happens on the 21st, it'll be Joe Biden's fault that the economy collapsed, not this guy whose fault it actually is. And despite the fact that
we're getting close, and McConnell says like, all right, we'd like to have a CR to extend the coronavirus protections until January 21st. It's like,
What's going on?
So nobody can get kicked out of their apartments until January 21st. It seems odd, but okay.
Look at Joe Biden letting people go homeless. It is hungry. Is crazy. But
there weren't as many homeless people when Trump was president.
Well, speaking of crazy, Trump has seemed more and more delusional and more unstable as time goes on, just screaming about election results, screaming about the Electoral College, screaming about everything and backing his campaign, or his fight to get votes thrown out, fires somebody, and then she files for a case in another state on his behalf, and then he tweets about that anyway. And I cannot imagine someone more disconnected from reality than that man at this point.
Yeah, what Rob was just describing there was Sidney Powell, who we talked about last week, as a fired member of the Trump White House legal team.
Fired
or the
because she
Trump
was
campaign legal team.
too conspiracy theoried to be in the Trump campaign, which is a low bar.
And not only that, but they gave the incredible press release where it said like she was practicing law on her own and she was never a part of the team.
The 1984 press release. We are at war with East Asia. We have always been at war with East Asia.
And then the very next day, she files a brief on behalf of the Trump campaign, but on her own in Georgia, threatening that like the voting machines were rigged. And then Trump's like retweeting her going like, oh, you can't wait to see the shit that's going to come out of this case. Just like this is madness. Like I don't even know what to say to somebody who thinks that, like we talked about, I remember when we talked about the Democratic Party bigfooting Bernie in the primaries last year, right?
2016
or 2016,
2016,
yeah.
Right.
And we were talking about how it's a corrupt exercise and how everything was basically being slanted towards Hillary, but we didn't ever accuse them of like dead people voting or them bothering to change votes or any kind of thing like that. We were talking about how they were scheduling primary debates on like Telemundo at 2 a.m. and like weird stuff that just benefited nobody but Hillary, right? And then there were emails about how they were trying to benefit Hillary and everything like that.
They were doing things like, where can we get this scheduled? Telemundo, 2 a.m.? Does that meet the requirement? Okay, let's do it.
There was tangible proof that it was going on. And I mean, like, when we talked about, Bernie's last stand in the 2016 primary was California. If he somehow won California, then you could make a convincing argument that he was going to be able to rally back somehow. Like, it was his Custard's last stand here in California. And they called the race at 8 o'clock when the polls closed. But, none of LA had been counted at that point.
Yeah.
And LA at that point was fucking crazy about Bernie.
Very
like
Bernified.
there was no way that Hillary was beating Bernie in LA. And they had called it early, like they always do. Like for, you would be able to call the Democrat to win California in the general election the second the polls closed too. But there's no way you could have like legitimately have, it's the same sort of thing with the election this year. We couldn't call Pennsylvania until we were done counting in a bunch of mail-in votes. It never felt comfortable that like you could call that race so early, and it got so much tighter than it ended up being.
Yep.
But like at the end of the day, there was something we could point to say this doesn't feel right. But it wasn't about like dead people voting or any of the truly preposterous claims that are out there. Like, there's so many safeguards in place to keep this from happening.
Wait,
There's
his
a paper
own
ballot
administration said it was the safest election and most secure election in history.
There's a paper ballot for every single vote in America.
Yeah.
Like it and if you wanted to, like Georgia, like they had to do a recount because it was so close that it was built into the Constitution that they were going to do a recount automatically. Great. They did the recount. The change in the votes was marginal. Mm-hmm. It went up for Biden. Like but by like I think the most, it was like 1,200 votes that like they just didn't go through properly the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Like a 1,200 vote advantage for Biden. Like there wasn't any kind of change that happened. They recounted Milwaukee and Dane County in Wisconsin. Dane County got an additional like 44 votes for Biden or something. Like there's no like,
you lose every time you do something. You lose. That's what happens.
But
again,
you have to be able to just like and the number. That's the problem. They set themselves up for, if this was a close election, we claim fraud, and if we can find 15 cases, on like a state that was swayed by like 100 votes, then maybe we can say this is the clear indication that something fishy is up. And we can't certify the results of Wisconsin, which is deciding the election in this hypothetical. Yeah. Because it's so close, and there's tyranny afoot. Like something is going on. And they can't do that, so they're just going to do it anyway, whether or not there's evidence to support it or not. And so nobody's watching the court TV of Rudy Giuliani going like, "Oh no, Your Honor, we're not alleging voter fraud at all." They're only showing the press conferences where he is not under oath, and he goes, "There's voter fraud all over the place." Like,
but his major claim, absent any evidence, is something along the lines of, "There's no way 80 million people voted for him," and it's just like, okay, but you're not disputing that 77 million people voted for you, or that 78 million people voted for you last time. You're just disputing that 80 million people voted for him this time. Okay.
Yeah.
But, and again, it's never that there was wide fraud everywhere. There's wide fraud only in the places where I lost and he won. Where I won, clearly there was no fraud. There's nothing to worry about here at all. It's only where he won. And if it was a Republican,
nobody bothered looking at Iowa.
Yeah, if there's a Republican in charge of the state Senate, the Secretary of State at the state level is a Republican, and the governor's a Republican, and everyone's a Republican, that doesn't mean there wasn't fraud. There could still be fraud there. And the FBI could be in on it, and the Department of Justice, and the State Department. I'm like, who are you going to throw under the bus next? But
well, and thank God that at least there were, 5 or 6 Republicans who had spines, because that's basically what stood between a humongous constitutional crisis and, like, Chris Krebs being able to go out and say, like, no, this is the most secure election in history, was one of the death nails to Trump's whole claims of massive voter fraud. Like, his own guy said there wasn't. So what are you going to do?
Yeah. And in 12 days, none of this matters anyway, because in 12 days, the Electoral College meets, and the certified votes from nationwide will be brought. And the Electoral College, I don't think, is meeting in person this year. They don't often all meet in person, but especially this year they won't. But they will just essentially meet at their state's level and cast their ballots and send those to D.C., and it'll all be done. And something I found out, Corey, that I didn't know was that there were actually faithless electors in 2017 or 2016. Mm-hmm. But there were 7 faithless electors, all of whom went for Clinton. It was all people who were like, I am Republican. I cannot in good conscience back this guy, so I'm going to vote for Clinton. And I imagine if there are any faithless electors this time around, it would likely be the same. Because it's, again, Republicans who I'm seeing on TV now who are just like, I don't know what is going on with my party right now, but I don't recognize it. And those are the people who the party chooses to go to the Electoral College. It's the old head Republicans, not the, like, I'm screaming with a gun in National Mall Republicans that you choose to go to the Electoral College.
Well, and it's not like, it's like people who are like the junior varsity Republicans of the senior staff of Republicans who are governors and mayors and, like that sort of people. Like, not candidates or not people who ever wanted to run for something themselves, but people who are serious about the party and wanted to be involved in some sort of way. Like, this is a good way to give a little honor to somebody who was a long-standing and loyal Republican or Democrat in whatever state you could be an elector in, like, and there's no drama to this. Like, Trump's just like, the Electoral College votes for me. I'm going to take the loss, but I think they're doing it wrong and stuff like that. Maybe just take this as the opportunity to just, like, he's done now. It's over. There's no legal fight. There's nothing you can do. It's been decided. So let's just move on with our lives. I mean, I'm sure he's still going to claim things all the way up until January 20th.
Oh, and beyond, probably all the way until November of 2024, which is really what I think his plan is now.
By the way, did you see that he's the leading candidate for a hypothetical 2024?
Of course he is, because
like
people
54% of Republicans would like to have him be the candidate in 2024.
Earlier in this episode, did you see the image I put up of number of people flying home during a pandemic?
Yeah.
Nothing surprises me anymore. And by the way, throwing under the bus Kelly Loeffler and Perdue, who still have an election to win in order to carry the Senate. Yeah. But the number one thing brought up at an RNC conference with voters 2 days ago, I think it was Friday actually, was why would I go vote when the whole thing's a fraud? So the president's calling everything a fraud. Republicans aren't going to go vote in Georgia, which means Democrats will, if Republicans don't vote, Democrats will carry it, send 2 Democratic senators, and that's a 50-50 tie with a VP that's a Democrat breaking that tie every single time.
Well, so, I mean, if you look at how the election ended up in Georgia, like, Ossoff and Purdue were real close.
Yeah.
Purdue didn't get the 50%, but, Ossoff was right there. And Warnock was beating Loeffler.
Yeah.
But there was too many other candidates to keep him from getting the 50% himself.
There's like 7 people in that race.
Yeah. So,
Because she is so terrible that 7 people were like, somebody's got to beat her. I'm going to beat her.
But there were people to the right of her who ran too. Like, I can't remember the Collins, I think it is the other guy who was running in the Senate seat, who like is apparently like a real
piece of shit. Yes.
dingbat. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so there were some things that she didn't back Trump
He's like
on.
the Andy Harris of Georgia, if you will.
There were some things she didn't back Trump on, and it was enough that there was somebody who could come out and be like, I will be in Trump's ass all the time. He says jump, and I will jump, and while in the air, say how high, and then go higher if he asks me to. So it just tells you.
I got QAnon as the homepage on my phone.
I do think that he's a QAnoner as well. I want to say that he is at least partially like. I mean, listen, I can't refute anything that Q has said. I'm not in government. If you put me in government, maybe we can look into some of it.
My favorite type of Q supporter is the guy who's like, I'm not saying he's right or wrong. We're just going to have to wait and find out. And it's just like, well, we have enough evidence to know that some of these things are right and wrong. It's just like, yeah, but I'd rather just take everything he says from this point on as like a fresh start. Like,
again, picking and choosing conspiracies.
It'd be like if I said like, hey, tune in every single week for Corey's 100% perfect NFL picks. And for the first 10 weeks of the NFL season, I get not one single game right. Like every single game against the spread, I pick incorrectly.
Yeah.
And week 12, I'm just like, well, I know I've had a rough stretch so far, but that's just proving that the comeback is going to be all the better.
Let me tell you how the COVID has messed with the NFL, and I have not been able to make my predictions correctly. But this week,
I've run into a lot of rotten luck. Now, my first pick, the Jets to win straight up.
But speaking of elections where maybe a black man is about to get screwed by a bunch of old white men, you had some thoughts about the Grammy nomination process, Corey, and I want to give you the floor to talk about them because I don't know if you guys know this. Corey doesn't like popular music. And when he said, did you hear about this Grammy thing? My mind nearly exploded.
Well, yes. Let me put it this way. I'm already an old man. Like, I didn't think I was going to.
Folks.
I don't think I was going to be the person who was just like, these kids today and their music, I just don't get it. But for the better part of the last
5 years, 10 years,
10 years or so, I've been like that. I don't like a lot of the new music that comes out. I just don't like it. I mean, like some of it's fine, but like, no, there hasn't been an artist that really made me go like, oh man, I can't wait to hear their next I can't wait to hear the next Post Malone song. Like, it just never excited me like that.
I used to play Tekashi and Post Malone as a punishment and to mess up Corey's Spotify statistics.
Yeah, Rob would every once in a while go like, oh, you got to hear this new song. It's the hottest song out there. And I'd just be like, all right. And then I listen to it and it sounds like something that was done on like a Fisher Price, like keyboard thing. And like,
spoiler alert, it was in fact made on a Fisher Price keyboard.
Auto tune and all that sort of shit.
With auto-tune.
But speaking of Teddy Ruxpin and auto tune. But The Weeknd, and specifically Blinding Lights, has been, I thought, a fantastic song. And every single song that I've heard from the album, even the performance he did at the AMAs with Kenny G and stuff like that, like everything about it has just been so like perfectly exemplary. Like it feels like almost like a coronation. Like there was no way you could deny that this was the biggest song of the year and that the cultural relevance of it was so far beyond that of any other artist that was putting things out there this year. And, I expected that. I didn't know the Grammy nominations were coming out last week, but I thought that if I heard about Grammy nominations, I would just hear The Weeknd's name listed 15 times in every single category conceivable because the song was so good. He is so good, and the album, again, of what I've heard of it, has been so good. So, like, I don't get where the Grammys come off not nominating him for anything. And, beyond that, the other people who have been snubbed, like just by what people in the industry, but the people in the music industry who talk about this sort of thing all the time are saying, BTS getting snubbed is completely unacceptable, or Halsey, or, you went through a whole list of people that you were just like shocked that were not considered, or bands that were like picked that like you've never heard of.
Off the top, Halsey's album was amazing. And I know you're not as big of a fan. I was living with somebody who forced me to listen to it over and over, and maybe it's just Stockholm Syndrome that now I'm like, that's such a great album because I've heard every song on repeat all the time. But I thought it was really good. But then you nominate somebody for Best New Artist who was nominated 6 years ago for a song. How are they a new artist? Oh, well, it's Billy Ray Cyrus's kid. So I get it. Okay, now I see where we're going. Somebody, Coldplay's nominated for.
Is that the same? Wait, hold on. Is that the same one that was in Metro Station?
No, Noah Cyrus is the daughter, isn't it? No.
Oh.
Yeah, Noah is a girl. But his son was in Metro Station. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think. Right? He has a son and a daughter?
I don't know. I'm not the person.
Anyway,
Cyrus.
Coldplay got nominated.
It's unbelievable that I even knew that one of them was in Metro Station. So
Coldplay got nominated. Noah Cyrus got nominated. There are two bands from like the 80s or 90s that got nominated. They haven't put out an album in 20 years, and now they put out an album and it gets nominated. And it's just like, okay. But the Weeknd's thing was he was offered to play the Grammys and essentially said, yes, except I got word that maybe the Super Bowl would want me to come and play. So I'm going to give you the pencil me in, but you can't say no to the Super Bowl. It's the biggest stage in the world. And allegedly the Grammy said something along the lines of, listen, we really like to have all the performers be people who are nominated. And if you're nominated, then you perform. That's kind of how it works. And he was like, well, I got to hear about the Super Bowl. And then he heard about the Super Bowl and got invited, and he's going to be performing at the Super Bowl. And all of a sudden, he's not nominated when the nominations came out. And it's like, oh, is this punishment for choosing the Super Bowl over the Grammys? And maybe it is. Or maybe it said a bunch of old white people are choosing the best album, best new artist, and they're like, Billy Ray Cyrus's kid? Oh, yeah, put her in there. And, these two bands I remember from when, I mean, these people are old even compared to us, and the 90s were like prime music time for them. I mean, that was for you too. But then like Fiona Apple gets, and I heard one or two songs off that album that I thought were good. Not really like emo rock's not my thing generally, but
yeah. And I mean, like that one in particular, like, I'm just going again off of the people I know who are like crazy about Fiona Apple said that this album was the best she's ever done. And it seems like the type of thing, like in an Oscar year, like if you have a decent actor who never really gets nominated for things, but he does an incredible, like Heath Ledger. Like Heath Ledger was always a really good actor, but he wasn't an Academy Award winning type actor.
Right.
And then all of a sudden he did the Joker, and then he died. And those two things led to him being so, like, it's like, we have to give it to him. There's no way we can pass this opportunity. We'll never be able to give it to him again. So this is our last chance. Mm-hmm. And someone like Heath Ledger will, obviously he deserved it, but I'm saying like in lesser years, somebody like that will win an award because of things like that. In the Grammys, like, it's like Fiona Apple has been a important artist for 25 years. She's just put out her most exemplary work, and there's no way to recognize it. Like it just, a lot of things seem weird. And like Halsey's statement about like, things that are bribes that don't really seem like bribes. It just feels a lot like FIFA to me,
Yes. Yeah.
Like how we're going to find out 5 months from now that the recording artists or the Grammys are just like filled with people who have been taking like private parties where, like whoever's willing to perform in the living room of the executive director of the Grammys is going to get a nomination, and anyone who doesn't show the proper respect is not. And like
on the day that just happens to be his daughter's birthday, and there's a group of people there, and you just happen to show up and perform for 4 hours.
I mean, if you want to come by with food too, I mean, there wasn't going to be any food, so
no, I feel like there's a lot
How much
of
do you love my daughter you've never met.
the Oscars thing where it's all I can't remember what director was talking about that, where it's like it's not even how good your work is, it's about going and working the circuit, and you just have to go to parties and you have to go promote yourself and do the whole thing. And that's why I know I'll never win an Oscar, because I'll just be like, this is what it is. It stands on its own. If you don't want to vote for it, don't vote for it. But as long as there are just groups of old white men deciding what gets nominated, you have to do what they want. So it is what it is. I mean,
like, even with the Oscars, there is definitely a chasm that can be eclipsed by the proper marketing strategy and the meeting the right people and going to the right parties and stuff like that.
Well, and as younger people get into the as younger people get in the Academy, it's going to change some. But the Grammys are an invite only. It's not like qualifications to get in, I'm pretty sure. Like the Grammy Academy.
But I mean, like, I remember Taron Egerton for Rocket Man a couple years back, right? Like, he was literally doing everything you need to do to be nominated for an Academy Award. He was going to every party. He was doing every interview. He was on podcasts. He was on TV. He was doing, like, literally everything his publicity team was saying, because they were probably, being real with him and saying, like, listen, you're an on-the-line nominee.
Mm-hmm.
Might make it, you might not. But if we really do this push right, you're going to get that nomination. You probably won't win. We'll put together a plan in case you get nominated to try and help you win. But this is a publicity stunt or publicity campaign that we're putting on together to get you the nomination.
And then you could say Academy and nominated for the rest of your life.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't need to actually win it. You could have the Academy Award nominated, and sometimes it's just as good. But he didn't end up getting nominated for it, but you could see the push was there. He really wanted it.
Yeah.
There's been other people who have had, great performances who got snubbed at the Oscars, and it's because they didn't give a shit. They didn't want to go to all the parties. They didn't want to be a part of the rigmarole, and it costs money. And like, the studios, I think they said, like, to get somebody to win, like a Best Actor award or something like that, which isn't the most expensive one to get, but still a very expensive one to try and win.
Yeah,
you're spending $2 to $5 million on a campaign to fly this person to all the talk shows, to put them on all the interviews, to book people in hotels, and like there's the backstage part of it, which is like, meet us at the W Hollywood for the interview tomorrow. We've already booked you, the journalist, a room, a suite.
Mm-hmm.
And the room service is all paid for. Enjoy yourself. Tomorrow at noon at the pool, you're gonna interview Taron Egerton.
Mm-hmm. But feel free to stay the night before and the night after.
Yeah, and then maybe after the interview is over, he does the, like, hey man, you're real cool. You wanna go get a drink or something? Like, I was thinking about watching a football game. You want to go with me to? And it's just like, wait, you like me? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
So you get the extra nice, like, the sweetest man in Hollywood is trying to win an Academy Award, and like all the tricks. It's just like,
and then you have Daniel Day-Lewis, who is just like, fuck you, I don't care. I don't even like this business. I wish I wasn't a good actor.
I'm so good, I don't need to do your bullshit.
But then again, nominated for Phantom Thread, didn't win.
Yeah, but I mean, like, in his head, I'm sure he went, I didn't try.
Yeah.
Like, I tried at the performance. That was the part that I was supposed to be judged on.
Yeah.
My nomination is because I tried so hard and did so well. My not winning this thing is because I didn't play the game. I didn't go out there and go to all the parties and stuff like that.
And by the way, I already have 2 of those. It's okay. I only have 2 hands.
And they're, this is not unusual stuff, because like the Grammys have gotten this wrong all the time. Like they've for as long as I've been alive, the Grammys have not been a good indication of what is popular in music.
Yeah.
And what it ends up coming to is whether or not they become irrelevant this year or in a year, a coming year or something like that. But at some point, it's just not going to be worth. There was a point where a blockbuster award didn't mean anything anymore.
Yep.
A blockbuster movie award didn't mean anything anymore. And just because you've been the preeminent music award for the last 70 years or whatever doesn't mean that tomorrow we wake up and care about what the Grammys do. And music in general, like, I think Drake if I'm remembering this correctly, Drake was like this close to not being on any label. He was just going to be independent.
No, he is. He is independent.
Oh, is he independent right
so
now?
He ended up releasing his new single through someone who was a UMG subsidiary, but it was a one-track deal. He just is doing one tracks at this point. Just I find somebody who gives me the best deal, I release through them, which is also why he hasn't put out new music.
But I mean, there's been this thing going on that I've heard about where he's basically the dam that stands between whether or not the labels are irrelevant anymore.
Yep.
Because if he can go out and do everything that a label could do all by himself, then a lot of other artists are going to say, why are we paying the label all this money to release our music when we can do it ourselves and keep it ourselves? Like,
well, and what they're still waiting on
we can hire publicists and marketing companies and everything like that, then we can get more of the share of the album that we already released. And already we're getting screwed on literally every little thing.
Yep.
So like, why are we,
So the weight is still on the album because he put out 2 singles, I think, but they weren't singles pre-album. It was like DJ Khaled hit him up and was like, "Hey, do you want to do this track together?" The one that we did the parody of. One of those was just them doing a fun thing, and then he also released one other track. But it's like, this is not an album. I just had an idea for a song. I put it together. Here's the song. Still working on the album. But it'll come to find out. Like, does he go through a major label, or does he release it himself, or does he go with a small label and just say, I really just need distribution. Here, I'm going to do everything. You distribute it.
I mean, if 10 years from now we're in a world where labels don't represent any of the biggest artists, then the Grammys are going to be a way different animal then too, because the same structures that were in place to get these Grammy voters their sweet bribes are not going to be in place anymore. Like, and no artist is going to say to them, like Halsey, if she's an independent artist in 7 years from now, is not going to say, I'm going to pay $10,000 to have some guy stay up in the W for the weekend so that I get a Grammy nom.
No.
Like, they're just going to stop fucking caring. Like, that's...
The rumor is that some of the smaller labels and management companies are talking about getting together and making their own award show and just being like the people's choice, but not obviously that. But like, we're going to get together and we're going to figure out how to make a democratic nomination process and a democratic voting process, and then nominate people and vote for them. And then we'll all throw in equal amounts, have a show, whatever that's going to look like in 2021, and just do it instead of the Grammys. And then see how many people watch our show versus the Grammys, and how many people care about the show where everyone you hear on the radio gets nominated versus everyone who haven't heard on the radio in 15 years gets nominated. So
how about this? You just send out a postcard to everyone who charted on the Billboard chart for any stretch of time in the last calendar year. And that includes the artists, the writers, the producers, all that, like just anyone who was involved in something that charted in the top 100 last year, or like specific genre charts. If you're talking about like who's going to get the Grammy for best metal artist or something like that, like just, segment out the metal people from the rest of the people and let them fight that out. But I'm saying, like, there's a way to like constantly be bringing new blood into this thing and have it be more indicative of like what the actual pulse feels like with music than what the Grammys do. That's basically the in and out of it. It's just
well, listen, the Weeknd got snubbed.
I haven't cared about the Grammys in a solid 10 years, and I hope that this is most of everyone else's opportunity to get out of the burning building that I left before it caught fire.
The Weeknd got
when it was merely just smoking, I left.
The Weeknd got snubbed. Halsey got snubbed. Fiona Apple got snubbed. The highest Billboard charting artist who is nominated at the Grammys hit 98 for 1 week, and then we had somebody who hit 200 for 2 weeks. And other than that, there's nothing in the Billboard Top 200. So,
and listen, I'm not saying you have to be a charted artist to win a Grammy. It would certainly help, because the Grammys would like to have as many big name artists as they can. So like they want to have Taylor Swift nominated because Taylor Swift is a huge star and that helps bring eyeballs to your show. But, I would also love the thing of like, the Dead Monkeys got nominated for Best Album, and it's just like they had a backyard release in Youngstown, Ohio, and it was just an incredible album that a bunch of music people heard about, but nobody else knows about. Like, it would be great to have like all the musicians were just like, no, this band that you've never heard of definitely was the album of the year. Like, I would love that.
Oh, they didn't chart, but everybody on Billboard knows who they are and is like, no, this is the album of the year. That'd be great.
They win album of the year, and it's just like, sorry, Johnny couldn't get off his shift at Target tonight. So he couldn't be here for the show, but he's so proud of you guys. Thank you for this award.
We're gonna have him come in by FaceTime. Johnny, are you there? Oh wait, what time is it Central? Oh no, he's not on break yet. All right, well, thank you for Johnny. And but if you want to talk about another group that's becoming irrelevant week after week, we're gonna have to go to a special segment, which hopefully we have the video for. Sports Ball.
Yeah.
All right. So, if that worked, hopefully that worked. Corey, you wanted to talk about some NFL issues this week, and there are 3 main ones, I believe. Is that right?
Two things, really.
Yeah.
First of all, we should talk about the Ravens, because last week we spent the last little bit of our show previewing the Ravens Thursday night game. And that game has still not been played because the COVID is everywhere. The Baltimore Sun had reported that Steve Saunders, the strength and conditioning coach for the Ravens, apparently was showing symptoms, ended up being positive, was not wearing his mask, was not wearing his proximity tracker. And now 19 or 20 Ravens are positive for coronavirus. And people there's 5 offensive linemen and 6 cornerbacks and, Calais Campbell and Brandon Williams and Lamar Jackson and, Ingram and Dobbins and our Morgan Cox, our long snapper, and Willie Snead. And, it's just a plethora of important people on the Ravens who are now sick and will not be playing on the new game, which is Wednesday Night Football.
I was going to say, luckily they have until Wednesday to recover this week. So
not Wednesday night. It's more like Wednesday afternoon football.
Well, it's night. If it's a London game, it's night, I guess.
It's happening at 3:00 Eastern on Wednesday.
Mm-hmm,
So be prepared for that noon football game that we all love so much on Wednesday.
I was going to say, finally, we get a noon football game on the West Coast. Only it's on Wednesday.
It's like a getaway game in baseball.
Oh, the business and special, yeah.
Yeah.
Except for nobody will be in the stands because no fans allowed.
Yeah, no.
Well,
fans.
Especially this game because everybody's got COVID who's at the game. So
I can't imagine that the Ravens win. I'm just gonna put it that way. I think that that the
this,
odds are.
Didn't you say this was a must-win game for the Ravens?
Yes, but I'm not feeling confident. When you lose, for instance, I said we lost 5 offensive linemen. 2 of them were the 2 centers we have on the team. So we have no center. You would say, oh, maybe you bring the long snapper in and he could be the center for the game, but he's out too. So it's not quite as bad as what the Broncos dealt with. We'll get to that in a second. But I mean, there are just enough things that are wrong here that does not make it seem like, it'd be like if you were saying, I'm going to win the Daytona 500 with my car that has a donut on. You're already not positioned best to be running the Daytona 500 in the car you own that you're just driving on.
My day driver. Listen, I got a tune-up. I just got an oil change.
This 2016 Toyota Corolla is going to match the field, I tell you. But every single time, some little thing, there's a piece of plastic that's rattling on the back. That's going to interfere with your ability to lower your drag, which is all the point of the NASCAR race.
But again, this was a must-win week because we were looking at playoff contention, and it's uncertain that the NFL is going to make it to the playoffs at this point. 42 starters on league-wide didn't start week 12 because they had COVID. And that's not including, as you pointed out, all of the non-starters who are also on the team. And I mean, I was trying to figure out who they counted as a starter. If you're a nickelback, you're not a starter. If you're a slot receiver, you're not a starter. It's basically 2 running backs, 5 linemen, 2 wide receivers, quarterback. That's
tight end.
And 1 tight end. That's your starting lineup. So
an I form, yeah.
Yeah, your classic I formation is your starting lineup, and then there are teams that run the nickel and dime every single down. And you lose 2 backs, a safety and a cornerback.
There's teams that don't have fullbacks.
Yeah, that's also
they just
true.
Run 3 wide receivers
as
their base operations.
So you lose one of those guys, there's your starter, but they don't count that as a starter. And I think there's something 100 people out right now.
But I mean, like, just my fantasy team, like, just
Oh.
as a, and this is not us talking about our fantasy teams here because nobody gives a shit about that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, like, I started literally everyone who could potentially be starting who was on my team. There was not a single person who was on my bench who put up points because I didn't have the luxury of having somebody on my bench who put up points because so many people were injured and COVID that I had no way of starting anyone else.
Me too.
Which left me with like what left me with Sam Darnold with 6 points and shit like that.
Played everybody. 2 of my guys got injured in the first half of their games. The guys I had left, I'm losing by 50 points, and I'm just like, this week doesn't even count. We're not going to look at this anymore.
Well, you also had no shot because Chelsea had Tyreek Hill, who put up 50 points.
Which, by the way, is a difference, actually. If Tyreek had just not played, if somebody could give him COVID, that would have been nice this week.
Oh, let's not wish that on Tyreek Hill.
But
Best wide receiver in the football.
I think the bigger question is, if the NFL continues what they're doing, which is not bubbling, but doing this like pseudo bubble situation, I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. You were talking about how they were talking about a walkout or a pseudo walkout, and I think that is what the players are looking at now. You can't keep us safe. We're not going to come play.
Well, I mean, I think that the NFL is trying to do what it can to keep people safe. And, you know, the fact that most teams don't seem to have massive outbreaks all the time seems like it's indicative of the plan working to a degree, you know? But anytime you have a system where people are going to be able to go out and go to dinner and be exposed, like, you're never going to have a perfect system. The NBA showed that the NBA and the NHL had no positive tests.
Yep.
All their players went in the bubble. They quarantined for 2 weeks. Nobody was allowed in the bubble or anywhere near the players during the entirety of the playoffs where they finished it up, and no positive tests. Baseball had positive tests all over the place because they were doing the same thing the NFL was doing, and this is just sort of how it works. And, you know, I feel bad for the Bronco fans out there because it does feel like they got screwed here.
Especially this week.
But I mean, like, the difference here is that, you know, the Ravens had an ongoing outbreak. Like, it's not like they could play tomorrow because people are still showing up sick. So until you have a group of people who are not sick or not showing that they're going to pass it on to somebody else, then you can't really safely play the game. Whereas the Broncos situation was the only people who showed up sick or were, you know, like, kept out because of the COVID protocols were just the people who were together. Like, you know, you would lose 5 players that they were all hanging out together. It just so happened that all those players were everyone in the quarterback room. So that went really badly for them.
Yeah.
But I would like to say this, you know, we never really get the opportunity to talk about these situations in this sort of context. So I'd like to put it out there for people to think about. Kendall Hinton started for the Denver Broncos on Sunday. He was a wide receiver on their practice squad going into the week. Literally every single Bronco is out with the COVID protocols. So they had to bring in somebody who was already on their roster somehow to play quarterback for them. And Kendall Hinton played quarterback at Wake Forest. And before that, in his 3 years as a starter in high school, or I'm sorry, in his career as a high school quarterback, he had 3 championships, 3 AA championships in North Carolina. I think I heard somewhere he was a state player of the year. He had the credentials to be a quarterback if he wanted to. He just got hurt in college and decided to make the transition to the wide receiver, where he is good enough to be on an NFL practice squad. So he's a talented player who was put in the worst situation possible to succeed in. But I would like every single fan who is sitting home and listening to the sound of my voice to think about this. You could not do what he did. He had an awful game, a truly awful game. He did not have a completion in the first half. The first half of that Saints Bronco game only had 3 yards completed in the air. It looked like it was from the fucking 20s. But I don't want Fat Jimmy in Denver sitting there going like, oh, the Broncos should have let me play. I was a starter on my high school team. Fuck you, Jimmy, because there's no way. It's just not going to happen. Kendall Hinton is a state player of the year, so he's already better than whatever 1 year of quarterbacking you did. He was the starter at a legitimate college. It's not like it's, you know, like East Oklahoma State agriculture university or something like that he went to. He went to Wake Forest. It's a legitimate school that's churned out legitimate NFL players before in the past.
Right. And won ACC championships.
I don't know. When's the last time they won an ACC champion? It's been a while.
There hasn't been a real ACC in a while. That's part of the problem too.
I mean, it keeps changing.
Yeah. But back when it was North Carolina, Maryland, Wake Forest in the ACC.
NC State, stuff like that.
NC State, yeah. I feel like they won in the 90s at least. Back they won an ACC championship in the 90s. So there's that.
Possibly. I mean, they've always been more of a basketball school than
That's
a football school.
Yeah.
But it's not saying that you couldn't have been a successful first round draft pick out of Wake Forest.
Yeah, pro players came out of Wake Forest. Nonetheless, it was a good football program.
Yeah, and I mean, it just think about it in terms of this. I like the Usain Bolt comparison. You like to think that the difference between Patrick Mahomes, let's say he's the best quarterback in the NFL, right? Patrick Mahomes and Kendall Hinton is like the difference between Usain Bolt and me running in a 100-yard dash, right? But it's not like that at all, because I'm me in that scenario. I'm still me. Kendall Hinton is the guy who finishes 10th or 12th, or maybe gets disqualified right before the race starts because he pulls an ankle or something like that.
Because he sees Usain Bolt is in his thing and he's like, oh, my leg.
He is a worthy competitor, even if he's not as talented as Usain Bolt, just because to get to the Olympics is such an incredible feat, whether or not you win or not, right? Yeah. So to get blown out by Usain Bolt doesn't mean that you're an awful runner. It just means that you're not as fast as the fastest person in the world, which is an okay place to be.
Yeah.
You don't have to be the fastest person in the world. Being the 10th fastest is sometimes good enough. But the fact that I saw so many people putting out tweets going I don't know why they're starting Kendall Hinton. I could have done better than this. Fuck you. No, you could. No way. There's not a chance.
Yeah.
This guy is a legitimate athlete and you had no shot. And this should just be an indication that even a professional athlete who has they have wide receivers and running backs, they have the rest of the team there. He could have hypothetically had a miracle game and done really well, but he didn't. And that's just because he didn't have any time to practice with these guys. He didn't have any time to learn the playbook. He didn't have any time to do any of this.
And also Jimmy in Denver.
He was put in a position to fail.
To Jimmy in Denver, if you were given the time to practice with that squad, you still would not have performed better than he had performed. I mean, in the end.
Oh, no.
We are fooled into thinking that there are 32 NFL quarterbacks. You can add to that maybe an additional 10 to 12 backups that have played multiple places, and you can see that they are NFL caliber guys no matter where they go. What's his name? Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Mike Glennon backing up in Jacksonville is not a starting quarterback you want to build your franchise around. No. But if you have an injury and he's got to come in, he's a serviceable quarterback in the NFL.
Ryan Fitzpatrick has made a career on just traveling around and being the backup guy that always gets called on to be the starter and then immediately gets replaced by a draft pick and sent off somewhere else. And then gets to Miami and does the same thing and then gets replaced and then gets called back again because the starter goes down. But because
Tua hurt himself.
I know. God damn it. You are my hope, man. Anyway, so there are 32 guys and then add another 10 to 12 on top of that. So we're at maybe 50 tops of NFL caliber quarterbacks. Then there's a bunch of guys who are backups on NFL teams that look embarrassing when they get in. And that's a very small circle. And then you have the guys like this guy who get in and are world-class athletes. And I think he's 24, 25 years old too?
Yeah.
And
he's like a rookie, I think.
Jimmy, you're 40. You're 40. You're like us. You're 40. And this guy's 24 and just came out of college and he's a world-class athlete and he practices with the team, but he doesn't know that side of the playbook. He only knows which way do I run and what direction when they call this play, not what everybody else is doing on the play. And he got slaughtered.
Well, I mean, it seems like it's all fun and games when somebody is there was Nathan Peterman a couple years ago with the Bills, where he came in and he was a rookie and they're just oh, maybe he'll be good. And he threw 4 interceptions on his first 4 passes that he threw in the league or something like that with 2 touchdown returns and stuff.
Yeah. And
people were just slaughtering him for, oh my God, Nathan Peterman, he's never going to play another snap in the NFL. He's worthless. He's done. He's toast. And you don't realize that he's still there. He's still in. I think he's in Oakland, Las Vegas right now, as a backup, and like he's a successful. He's a good enough person to be on a good enough talent to be on a team, and just because he looks like the worst quarterback compared to everybody else doesn't mean that he is not, in fact, way better than anyone else that could be potentially signed off the street. You know, like
it looks
Uncle Rico. It's like it's literally like you all look like Uncle Rico out there. Like I could have thrown that ball over the mountain. Like,
and again, you Jimmy from Denver, you have no understanding. It looks like a lot of time on TV what a 3-second rush looks like when you have a 250-pound man coming at you from your blind side, and you got 3 seconds to scan the whole field twice, make a decision, and throw a ball over some guy who's likely taller than you,
jumping to bat it down.
And then another guy who's taller than him jumping to bat it down. Like Drew Brees, I don't know how that man plays professional football at 5'2", but like just like cocking back and
5'9" to be fair.
Oh, whatever.
He's my height. Yeah.
Well, there you go.
But, I mean, like,
he's your height.
Yeah, but I'm saying like if you look at me, you're just like Corey's not tall enough to be a quarterback in the NFL. Like.
But this is why I maintain Corey, and this is a new position for Corey, because he has always said when we watch like Beastmaster or any of this stuff, like, listen, just let me out there, I could take on this course.
See, but I do that for fun because I know how much it makes you guys laugh. I lean into that joke.
But I still maintain every Olympic city should nominate Olympians from the city, average Joes, who get to go into only the final round. So let's eliminate everybody down to 11, so that in the final round it's Usain Bolt in the 400 meters, and you have 11 competitors, and then our nominated Olympian, because that will give you a perception of what an average guy does on the course next to Usain Bolt.
I would love nothing more than if a team was like, like the Jets are 0-15, right? And they're like, we just need to lose one more game to get the number 1 overall pick. Like, literally nothing matters. So we're just going to pick a season ticket holder off this list who wants to be quarterback for the Jets. I would just love to see, like, I'd love for Fat Jerry to finally get his chance to show people what it's like and just show somebody get literally murdered on the field because they don't deserve to be there.
By the way, like, let's have the backup defense actually, like, let's get everybody on the field. No red jersey, Jerry. Why you want a red jersey? No. We're going to have the defense coming at you. We want to see what you got. And then just like 2-step, what's up? Bam! Oh, he's down.
It would
head
last
in that
half
helmet?
a drive. It would last half a drive.
Not the first time you get hit by a grown man, you're just like, nope, not for me. I'm out. Sorry. If you can walk.
Could you just even imagine, like, you're just showing up to work and it's just like, Rob, we're gonna ask you to do something a little bit different today.
Well, Terry,
and you just find yourself as a quarterback and you're looking across and it's Aaron Donald on the other side, like a literal mountain of a man, like coming at you. You're just like, no, thank you.
Terry Tate off his corner or off his linebacker.
Yeah.
Jerry, I want you. Here's what we're gonna do.
You killed it, Joe. You fill it up. Woo!
That's so good. And most people who listen to this are too young to even know who Terry Tate off his linebacker is, but it's Jerry. I'm going to hire Terry Tate to come to your office and just blindside catch you by surprise at some point.
What's hysterical was Terry Tate wasn't a great player. He was like the Kendall Hinton of the time.
Yes.
But as soon as he was in those commercials, people were just like, "Oh, is he the most fearsome linebacker the league had ever seen?" It's like, no, he barely played.
Could not play. Got kicked off his team. That's why he's on TV.
He wasn't good enough. That's why he's in commercials now.
He had a name that sounds good for TV, so it worked out really well.
Exactly. He looked scary. That was what he had going for him.
Did you have more NFL things? Was there another thing?
No, that was it.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and close up Sports Ball. Sports Ball.
Yeah. And should we do the last one real quick?
Well, I was going to say, let me pull that. I have that here we go. And because we have all the drops, we'll go take a visit down to the Baltimore corner.
Where you get the straight dope.
Exactly right. And let me find you. I had you queued up with it. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's not the right one. Corey call. Here we go. Oh, apparently I didn't. There we go.
It's all right.
Baltimore
I can,
story.
I can explain.
Hit it.
Yeah. So, there's a story in the Baltimore Sun this past week where there are a number of Instagram pages that are basically saying who has snitched around town. And if you don't want to appear on these pages, then you have to send a wireless fund to the owner of the page and they'll remove you.
Cash App, son. Cash App.
I'm sure there's a Venmo or a PayPal out there somewhere. I'm sure they'll make exceptions, but some Bitcoin might do you well because it's not easily transferable or it's not easily to trace it. So
Yeah, they're missing that Bitcoin.
they don't want to find themselves at the peak of the bubble. That's the problem.
You can. I think you can use Bitcoin on Cash App actually. It might be an envelope. Yeah, it might be one of the things you can
see.
use.
But then you have an account with Cash App, so it doesn't really make sense to
that's right. Yeah.
make your anonymous transfer. Just like I'm gonna pay cash for this weed when you deliver it to me through this app I order it through. You know.
I mean, I also have a Bitcoin.
So that there's no paper record of what I did here today.
I have a Bitcoin wallet for reasons. By the way, side note, unrelated. Do you know OnlyFans takes Bitcoin? Just saying.
Nah, I won't do that. I was gonna. So basically, we're at this point where snitches get likes, and we have to figure out what we're gonna do about this because we're in this situation largely because the Baltimore Police Department isn't very good at their job, and the state's attorney's office isn't very good at their job, and the city council and the mayor for the last 50 years have not been doing a very good job either. And now we're at the situation where you probably have a pretty good shot of ending up dead if you show up on one of these Instagrams as a snitch. And there's nothing that the police or the state's attorney can do to really save this situation. Because, like, what was the clearance rate last year for murders? It was like 42%, right?
Yes,
for the city
of all murders of all time, and they were clearing some older cases because they found bodies in houses. Of year-on murders, it was lower than that. It was like in the high 20s of like a murder that happened and you cleared it within the year that it happened.
Let's just call it 30, just
Sure.
to give ourselves an even number here, right? Because we're the city of Los Angeles, we only deal in straight numbers. There's no fractions going on here. So 30, they say they clear 30% of their cases. So 70% of people who are murdering people are not even getting caught.
Nope.
So as charges are getting brought against them. Of the 30% who are actually getting charged, like what was the clearance rate on the state's attorney? It was like
5%
or something like that, right?
5% of serious violent crimes are resulting in convictions.
So yeah, of the 30%, only 5% of those people are actually going to jail for these crimes. And going to jail for these crimes probably means they pled down into something else because that's how most of these things are getting settled these days. But honest to God, there's a higher chance that you can murder somebody and not get charged and not get brought in front of a judge for it. And why would you go snitching? Why would you tell anybody? Because it's not like your death is going to be avenged by the person who killed you for witnessing the murder that they did. Like we're in such a dangerous place here because there's nothing that stops this from happening, you know, like,
and the
underground economy of it has now exceeded what the legitimate space can do.
You say that
really at this point, all you could do is like get Instagram to kick them off, right? Like,
right. You'd have to look to Instagram to do it. But you say the cops and the state's attorney are not doing their jobs, but it's not even just that. It's that the cops are so bad. They've created a tribal mentality where it's us versus them, where us is the people. And I would rather stand with the murderer who murdered somebody on my block because you, cop, you and your people are worse. I don't know if you remember, but one of my law books got stolen out of my car when we were living in Ridgely's Delight. And the dude down the block may or may not have been a drug dealer. I don't want to say whether or not he was. There was frequent foot traffic in and out of his house. And I just went down to him and I was like, listen, man, I know you live here. I parked kind of in front of your house. Somebody broke in my car. They took my law book. It is what it is, but it's expensive and I don't have that kind of money. And, I don't like say anything because you have your business. I have my business, but I need my book. And I put a trash bag or a piece of cardboard on the window. And then came back like 2 days later and the cardboard was still there, but the book was inside on the seat. And I was like, so what you're telling me is if I had called the cops, they would have said, you're out of luck. Maybe your insurance will cover it. Sorry, go buy the book again. But I went down to the drug dealer on the street and he essentially shook down every one of his guys, found who took this book, which is worthless to anybody who's not a law student, got it back, and then broke into my car a second time to put it in there, but then returned the cardboard to its proper place. And I'm like, you're better than the cops. And yes, murder is not stealing of a book, but at the same time, I get the mentality of like, I'll pick the devil I know over those devils at this point.
It's way more reasonable that you would consider dealing with the person who dealing with the criminal than dealing with the cops. Yep. Because like number one, I don't feel comfortable calling the cops for anything.
No.
And most people in West Baltimore don't feel comfortable calling the cops. If somebody broke into your car and stole shit, like most people just say to themselves, well, that's it. Like
that's just gone. All right.
Yeah, that's just gone. That's it. I had my car broken into a couple times. I never called the cops.
No.
Like I had stuff stolen out of it. I was just like, it's not even worth the time. Like, what are you? I got to sit here and wait for the cops to show up. And then they look at me like I'm the wrong person. It's just like, well, you shouldn't have left stuff in your glove box that was locked up. And it's just like,
okay.
It's not like I left an iPod on the floor. It's like, it's like I had things like, hidden away. It's just like, well, people are going to look there first. And it's just like, yeah, but like maybe try and find them. I don't know.
Oh, by the way, if you witness a murder and the guy who does the murdering knows that you didn't say anything, that you did not snitch, that earns you some cachet with people who are maybe the people you should be worried about earning cachet with. You become a witness for the state, it will not keep you from getting your ass shot by another cop. There's no earning cachet with the state. You're disposable to them, and that's why they don't spend any money on witness protection. But the guys on the street, you do earn cachet with. And that was kind of the thing with the guy. He was just basically like, hey, the blue car, don't fuck with the blue car. The guy, he's just trying to get by, and I also told him I was thinking about being a defense attorney, so I'm sure that didn't hurt. But one of those things.
He might be a lawyer who can help us.
I had breakfast with gang members after the uprising, just like, oh well, dude, like, what's your situation? I'm just a law student, but like, I don't want anybody to be in jail. Like, prison should be abolished. That's where I am. And they're like, hey man, you want to get pancakes or something? Like, let's go get some fucking pancakes, because I have more in common. They have more in common with me than we have each other with the police, because we are all more likely to be, if you are not blue, you do not matter. And how many stories have we seen from the Baltimore police where it's just like, oh, well, what happened? Well, they harassed me for 25 minutes until they realized I was so-and-so's daughter or nephew. And then they let me go. Once they were like, hey, I'm real sorry about that. Didn't realize that Sergeant Peppercorn was your uncle. So, just tell him I said hi, and you get on home now. And it's like, well, so if I'm not blue, it doesn't fucking, that's how it works. So, of course, I'm going to just show Corey's thing again. This thing makes absolute sense, because earn cachet with the people who can pay it off, and don't make enemies of the people who are dangerous. Now, the cops are fucking dangerous, but I don't know that they're any less dangerous or more dangerous than the guys who are committing murder on the street.
I mean, like, we had at this point, it's basically a conversation of what is and isn't appropriate to out people for.
Yeah.
So we had a conversation about, like, I think there was some Instagram account a long time ago that was saying, like, here are the real identities of people who are, Nazis or alt-right members who are at, like, Charlottesville or, any other type of events. Like,
here's where they work. Here's where they live. Here's
Jimmy David. He lives in Raleigh, North Carolina. He works at AAA auto repair or whatever. Like, and then they would lose their jobs and they'd be like, why the fuck are you putting us on this thing saying that we're white supremacists? It's like, well, you are.
You're
so
white supremacist.
Yeah. What do you want me to, here's you in a Klan at a Klan rally. What do you want me to do? Like,
I'm not wearing the robe, man. You're holding a Nazi flag, bro. They're good enough for me.
So in as much as you are okay with like there being a far right internet depository where you can find all these people, I'm sure the criminal elements in Baltimore are saying to themselves, there should be a place where there should be a Facebook for snitches where we can just look and see all the people who are snitches so we know.
Now, I will say I don't agree with this. I think that this is bad. It's bad for society, but I understand it.
Right.
Agreeing and understanding are not the same thing here. So,
right. But I'm saying like, like I'm sure there is a version of this for everyone. Like, there's somebody that everyone quote unquote hates. Like, there's I'm sure, some Republican would love to see a depository of people who like AOC. It's like, oh, I'll never hire this person because they don't know what's up. Like whatever it may be. Like
there's a repository of secretly gay Republicans, and it's just like, hey, so this guy voted against marriage equality, but also he frequents gay clubs on the weekend. And here he is at a club, and here he is at an event with his wife, and here he is in a bed with another man. And it's, okay, you've opened yourself up to that.
It's basically what I'm getting at is if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander.
Yeah.
Like this is sort of the situation we're in. If you're gonna look a blind eye on one of these things, then you can't look the blind eye on the other because you can't be okay for it just because you don't like it,
Yeah.
And I mean, like, Instagram is going to have a different opinion of this because they're just going to say like, well, our platform is not built on extortion.
The extortion part is the questionable part. If you were just like, nah, it doesn't matter what you do, you're up here now, so good luck. That's also if you, I don't know that they're naming the people. They're saying here he is testifying in this case against this person and tagging tagging the person to be like, yo, check this out. This is the guy who's testifying against you. But the extortion part of it is a bit extreme, no matter what. Because, by the way, if you are on those Nazi call-out threads, there's nothing you can do to get your name off of it. You can argue you're not a Nazi. It doesn't matter. They don't post it until they're sure, and then you're up. That's it. So,
well, in their mind, there's no amount of money that you could give them to really overturn the Nazism part of it all.
Yes.
So like. It's just like the point is to hurt you financially. And like, really, it doesn't hurt somebody financially. Like, I don't think somebody would be denied a job because they ended up on the snitch list. I just think that you're more likely to end up gunned down in the street if you end up on the snitch list,
By the way, the snitch list also doesn't help you get a job with the state or the police because, again, you don't earn cachet with people on the state side just for doing the right thing. Even though you should, and you don't get any protection from them, even though you should. But you do earn cachet the opposite way, which is, again, why it makes sense. This all makes sense, whether or not you agree with it or not. I see why it exists.
Yeah. Well,
it's upsetting.
You know what else I see why it exists?
What's that?
OhTheAnthem.com. Corey to OhTheAnthem.com. Oh, the Anthem on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and the listener line, 443-219-7595.
What's that number again?
443-219-7595. You can find more of me on my website, CoreyBakerFilmmaker.com, Facebook.com/Corey Baker Film, and at Legends5 on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Roberto's back, so as soon as he's quarantined, I have lots of ideas of things to do. So keep an eye out for that. Rob's got a lot more going on. You should just cut to him.
I'm just waiting because I've heard this for so long. I've heard this.
I know.
Just waiting on Roberto, and then it's like,
there's a new stay-at-home order, and I can't go out after 10 p.m. and it's throwing off my whole vibe here, man.
Anyway, so you can find me at Robert and Cheek on all your social networks. Check out robertandcheek.com where you can find more links to everything that I'm doing. We are wrapping up the Everyman movie reviews. So we're going to go on a hiatus, at least for a little while, until movie theaters reopen, which looks like it's going to be later rather than sooner. So you can find the last few episodes up until the end of the year at youtube.com/Rob Cheek or Everyman Movie on social media. And of course, the Rob Reviews podcast is available on anchor.fm/Rob Reviews, and all the social media is there for that as well. All that you can find through links at Robert and Cheek. Again, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok. Everywhere. Basically, I put more new content out in a week than most people put out in a year, probably.
Yep, that's me.
That's basically it. But yeah, this week I did a review of Seberg. Came out on Sunday. And on Thursday or Monday, I had, by the way, I did a review of The Torture Report, which I was so tired while recording it. I called it The Terror Report the entire time. And then I was like, well, maybe I just thought it was the wrong name. But the very first thing I said was The Torture Report. And then interspersed during the review, I said torture or terror.
Report.
I just said terror and torture. I threw them interspersed in there. And I'm just like, I just was really tired apparently when I was recording it. So, but The Laundromat, The Terror Report, God damn, I just did it. The Torture Report. Seberg, and the most recent one, which is I can't remember. It's a break from all that though. It's something fun and interesting. So check it out. YouTube.com/RobG.
All right. Well, I think we've done good here today.
We've done something. I don't know if it's good, but as always, you're listening to the O the Anthem podcast, part of the O the Anthem digital network. For Corey, this is Rob. Have a great week, everybody.
Are you ready for some football? A Wednesday afternoon party. We got COVID.
That's what we got the most of. We got most of COVID. That's right.